little studio, Nick. It's a temporary studio. We enjoy being with you again.
And we enjoy being with you as well.
Thank you. The topic is the past lives. Even those people who don't believe in past lives or reincarnations, when we are talking about past lives, they start to show very big interest about the topic. In your regular program, you give seminars, hold seminars about past lives. What is the reason? How past lives can help us? Many questions I can put you. Please start to talk about it.
Sure. Many years ago, I went to one of my spiritual teachers, and I said to him, I'd like to learn about my past lives. I was curious, like many people, very curious. And he kept asking me, why? Why do you want to know? Do you want to know so that you can find out you were some famous figure, or that you were something else in the past just for curiosity, or for your ego fulfillment? So he really brought up a very important question. What's the value of knowing about these things? So he said, if you want to know about your past lives, if it's to serve love, if it's to awaken a deeper love, or deeper understanding of love, and a deeper understanding of why you're here and what your purpose is here, and how to get a better outcome from your life, then it's worth your while to explore past lives. So past lives are a part of what we call we can call the healing process, we spoke a little earlier in an earlier video, in the sound healing video, about brain waves. But we have to also consider that, like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Is it the brain or is it the mind? And the mind is a vaster field of information, which also includes memories of our past lives. Now, there are a number of documented cases of people who recall their past lives and or had experiences on the other side. And so this doesn't depend on your brain waves. Your brain is an instrument through which you can register in this world memories. But the mind is vaster than that. And so the mind is more like an energy field. The way that I was taught to actually explore this was to first look at your likes and dislikes in life, and look at the things that limit you and limit your ability to love and to grow. And then begin to look back at where that's perhaps coming from. For instance, you might have a real love or hate for a certain food or a certain country or a certain language or a certain activity. Maybe, for instance, you love to watch gladiator movies, and maybe you were one in another life, or these kinds of things. So by association, we will remember in our present life certain kind of memories that come to us. And some people call this deja vu. And so when we're able to access these memories, they can assist us to undergo deeper healing in ourselves, especially from things that don't seem to go away from regular therapy, regular healing about our childhood or, adolescence or whatever.
How do I heal if I see my past life? Okay, I go back, I got the feeling, or I got the evidence in my mind that I was a gladiator, let's say. It's a popular thing. And knowing that I was a gladiator, why does it heal me? Or
Well, let me give you some examples, just maybe some stories from people that I've worked with that had past life experiences. For example, I had one of a man who came to me to see me because he had done a lot of therapy trying to work on why he would reach a point in his work life where he would be ready to receive a promotion to take a bigger position of responsibility. And every time this would come up for him, and it had happened maybe 5 or 6 times in his life, he would somehow sabotage it. He would do it in some manner by either a poor work performance suddenly, or alcohol, or other things, or just basically quit. And when he first looked at finding the reasons for this, he went back and he had a very perfectionistic father that he was in his upbringing. But even with this work, both in psychological evaluation thinking and even in healing processes, he could not somehow change this pattern. This pattern persisted with him. So by the time he came to me, he was really saying, I don't know that I believe or disbelieve in past lives, but I would like to explore it, to see if there is something in it for me. So we instructed him on how we would work with this process, and in order to access memories, one has to be in a deeper alpha or theta brainwave state, at least very relaxed, and allow the memories to arise again. Quite often they come as pictures or sensations or feelings. So in his case, he first had a deep sensation when he was in a deep relaxed state of a great deal of tension in his body. And then he began to have a memory, and this memory unfolded into the story of this life event in the past. And it was that he had been a military captain, and this was during a time when the U.S. military was fighting the American Indians back some time ago, and he was preparing for a battle with the Indians, and he had had a how do we say, he was a very brilliant captain, and he always worked things out for his troops, and he had a great deal of love for his troops and a deep sense of responsibility. So what happened was that he overlooked some things, and that night before the battle he went into a town and basically just had a good time and relaxed, and somehow the troops in their laughter and their premature celebration were heard by some Indian scouts. The Indians changed their strategy completely that night, knowing that that army was there, his army was there, the troops, and they basically slaughtered the army. He survived with maybe 5 people at most, of which, when he looked back, one was his father. And when he went through this experience, it wasn't just an intellectual process, it was a deep emotional process of reliving an experience through this figure. And when he did, he came out of this feeling like he could forgive himself and let go and move on. And what ended up happening was that he did go back, and in a matter of a few months, he took a much better position in a firm, and he expressed to me that he felt the self-confidence and the lack of fear that he had before that was troubling him. So if it had not been for this kind of approach, I don't know his chances of shifting this issue in his life. So we can ask, of course, there are skeptical people that say, well, I mean, it could have been a story, a good healing story, and it might have been. And we do know, for instance, from ancient times, for example, in ancient Greece, on the healing sanctuary of Epidaurus, which was in southern Greece, that there was an amphitheater, and they used to have plays of all the Greek dramas and tragedies. And the people that were there that came to heal at this retreat center would have a catharsis. They would identify with the characters in the play, and they would move their emotions, and they would get healing. So in a way, one could say, yes, you know, by looking at something that's not exactly you, but you can live through, like a good movie, and you identify with someone, you can then let go of those old defenses and criticisms and open to a deeper place in yourself and heal. I don't judge whether it is or not, but I do believe that past life experiences do exist for people, and that it's a very deeply healing process. And it can heal on other levels. I have another story that I tell sometimes because it was quite remarkable, of a woman who had quite a number of physical problems. And when she was quite young, when she was born, she had a deformed foot. We call it a club foot. And she had to endure some painful operations for this. She had an eye muscle that was weak, and when she went to the hospital, the doctors operated on the wrong eye, and again, more pain and more discomfort, and that would cause any child trauma, you know, with hospitals, right? And then at 21, she had an appendicitis, and it went perfectly well, but 2 hours after the surgery, she had an extreme pain, a high fever, and they discovered in taking an x-ray that the doctors had accidentally left one of the healing implements in her belly. So this was going on, and by the time she had visited me, she was in her mid-40s, and she had a job working, but she was very, very confined to her home. Physically, she was overweight, and she had very, very low energy. Her adrenal glands, again, he was very stressed. So we did some basic work, and we looked at her parents' issues and whatnot, but this didn't seem to have a lot of impact on her. And then one day I suggested that she do a past life process. So we went into the process, and after some time, she had a memory come of being in a white coat and being in the Middle Ages. This was during the Black Plague, during the Black Death in Europe, I guess what, in the 13th, 14th century, whatever. And she was in a kind of hospice, a kind of place where people are when they are ready to die. And you would expect that the atmosphere would have been very compassionate and relaxed and so on. But instead, she saw herself, she witnessed herself kicking the people that were dying with hatred and vengeance in her heart. And she was shocked by this because she obviously wasn't this way in her life, at least her present life, quite contrary. She then went back and received more of the story of what happened. And this man had been a medical doctor and a young doctor and was in love with a woman, a noble woman, but because of his economic stature, he couldn't marry her.
Yes. Yeah.
So as this is going on, she's going back in her pictures to the doctor with the coat, and he sees a woman lying on the floor, and he kicks the woman over as she's obviously dying. And then suddenly the patient I'm working on, she starts crying profusively and saying, "My God, that was the woman that I was in love with," because she, you know, had never let go of this and felt this deep remorse and this deep anger and all but rejection in that life, and had lived that life basically alone and not connected to people. So this was a big shock to realize what this was really from. And she went ahead and moved through this experience and came out of it. And I told her, please come back the next day and we'll complete this, because I want to be sure that we get how this affects your current life. I mean, let's make the bridge for you in this. Because she was holding a deep guilt and remorse from that life, and she didn't realize this. She had no idea that this was in her. So the next day, she didn't come for her appointment. And I had my nurse call her, and she said, "Oh, I can't come in. Something really bad has happened." And I'm wondering what is going on. She's not talking about it, okay? I called and said, "It's okay, come in." And so she came, and she was sitting in her car in the parking lot, but not coming in the office. So I say, okay, I go outside, I put my chair down, I'm going to talk to her. And she just puts the window down about so much, and she says, I went to work this morning, I was very happy and released. And then, about an hour into my work, the people around me, we all started smelling something very like a dead animal, like a dead rat. And so the management came in, they evacuated the area, they called the pest control in. They couldn't find anything. Then they came, the employees came back and sat down, and sometime later the other employees realized this smell was coming from her.
Oh.
And she didn't know why. And of course, she was really, really feeling ashamed about this experience. So she went home, and then she called, and then finally I got her to come. So I brought her in, and the smell wasn't so bad, you know. The open window helped. But at any rate, but the point was that I wanted to know, have you ever had this smell before? What is this? And we looked at it and looked at it and looked, and then finally I asked her, do you have a strange taste in your mouth or anything? She says, yes, I have this metallic taste. Did you ever have that before? Yes, for many years I took a medication for anxiety. Do you take that now? No, I haven't taken it for quite a while. And then quite suddenly I realized, and we talked, and she said, yes, I think you're right, that when she went through this healing, her soul, her true self, gave her body to let go. And she began to detoxify. And she was beginning to let go of all those toxins and poisons in her body she had held out of her own resentment for years and years and years. We gave her some homeopathic medicines. We gave her some things to take just to clean out. Well, the testimony of what this experience was for her came afterwards. And that was that she was able, after that, to lose a lot of weight. She was able to gain much more self-confidence about herself. She had never had a relationship. She actually had a boyfriend. And she joined us on a trip going abroad with a group that we took to Egypt and Greece, and was able to climb on her own, without help, into the Great Pyramid. And for her, this was really like a miracle. And it came from an experience with a past life.
So what you said, it suggests me that we are a walking memory in a way, and we have many secrets, many stories in ourselves that influence us, but we don't know about it.
Right.
It's very strange that we think that we are logical, we know what we do, but based on these stories, it turns out that we don't handle all the strategies, or we don't control all the strategies what we have. So it works to clean it, or
I've seen so much evidence that shows that in fact it is. It is worth it. When a person really is ready and has the commitment to explore it, sometimes it becomes the last chance kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's what they come to. And you don't have to believe in it. That's the thing that's really interesting about past lives. It comes up.
You relive it.
And you relive it, and
yeah, and there was another point, that there must be a decision in the past life, that a kind of new strategy what we followed, and maybe you change the strategy. Going back to the past life, you can change the strategy.
Yes.
And then the new strategy allows you.
Exactly.
Not to talk about
exactly.
the karma, which is another story in this case.
Yes, it's bringing up the past to bring it to the present, and to take the best out of it and to heal it and move on. How to say? For those that are skeptics, though, I also want to tell a story, because this one was very, very direct for me, and it was through one of my patients, her daughter, because there are more and more children that appear to be remembering their past life incarnations, and they are not necessarily from cultures or religions that adopt or accept past lives as a part of their belief system. So in this case, it was a little girl. She was about, I think, 5 years old at the time, and she started telling her mother, when her mother would put her to bed at night, "Mommy, I want you to meet my good friend." And her mother is thinking, some imaginary friend, I guess. And the girl gave the name and said, "This is my bodyguard." And the mother is really kind of concerned, because she's thinking, what happened to this little girl? Was, did she have a bad experience with someone when I don't know it, a babysitter or something? She was really concerned. But the little girl was always very happy to talk about her bodyguard. And so the mother came to me and said, "I don't know what to do with this. Is this a sign of stress and pathology for this kid? Is there a problem here? What can I do?" And I said to her, "Why don't you listen? Why don't you hear her story and take some notes, and let's talk more about it." So she went back, and about a month later she came back and she said, "Wow, I've got a big story here." So the little girl told her that she had been a queen in an African country about 200 years ago or so, and that this man was her bodyguard, and that she was a very happy person in that life, and that she had a lot of creative ability. She did a lot. She danced, she sang, she was happy in herself. And she went on, and she described and gave the name of the country, but the name seemed not to be a name we recognize now. So the mother came and was very perplexed by this, and it even got worse for her, because the little girl would go to school and sometimes look at a little boy and say, "Oh, I love your aura. It's so beautiful." And the little boy said, "Oh, no, get away from me." So the teachers were actually coming thinking, I don't know if your little girl is okay. So what was happening, this little girl was opening to her mind in a higher way, to her Akashic records, her causal body, whatever you want to call it. And she was actually accessing information, and with this she was also seeing and getting some gifts that she had from the past. Mother was quite concerned, so I said to the mother, and this was back some 20 years ago, research it, look at it. This was at a time when she couldn't just go on Google comfortably in her living room and her computer. She went to a library. She came back and said, "I believe it." She said, I found the name of the country. I found all the descriptions the girl had given of this individual's, or this culture's, the life of these people. And I said, "Well, that's fine, just accept it, and it's okay." So the little girl didn't seem to be bothered after the memories. It was like, okay, my mother accepts it, everything's okay. This little girl was interesting, because how did this life affect her current life? What was coming from it for her? Well, actually very positive things. There wasn't any memory of trauma in that life. It was a memory that actually helped her regain some gifts from the past. One thing, she was very, very interested in singing and dance. And as she grew up, she learned to do these things very well. So she got this, she believed, from this past time. The other thing was interesting, that in school, all of her friends, her closest friends, were Afro-American children. And she really resonated with them from her heart. And she was actually from an Anglo-German background, blonde hair, blue eyes, very different in at least her appearance, but her soul had these memories, and she was able to bring back this. And I guess she was meant to. I think the soul really knows the experience it wants to have and what it wants to develop when it comes back.
Good, nice story.
Yeah.
okay, we have past lives, but sometimes we hear about life between lives. How does it match?
Well, there's been a lot of research done on this, and just to give you a kind of, how can we say, a kind of idea, one of my spiritual teachers talked a great deal about how this sort of process takes place. And what he said was that, you know, in essence, we are an atom of God. We are spirit soul, we would call it. We have a light body. We are actually formed of light. We then take on a mind, and we take on the different bodies, and we come for our experience here. Because here in this world, this is the way that we can best individuate ourselves and grow consciously of our true identity. What he would say happens, and I think this is what I see in accounts of people from past life therapy and all, is that this spirit soul, a very high essence, our true self, our essence, let's call it, has another aspect of itself called a permanent personality. It's the part of us that comes with us in each incarnation and is able to observe and assess our experiences and reap the wisdom of that. You could call the permanent personality almost like the feet of the soul. This is what Stylianos Tesli's Dioskuros called it. And when we come into the world, we take on a temporary personality, and maybe 80% of our experience is fresh and new, and maybe 20% or so is from that past, all that past. And we are working all that out. And when we return, when we leave our physical body and we go into the other dimensions, that we go into this field of the mind first, and we are then the permanent personality, and we are assessing our life experiences. We call it life review. We cross a transition bridge to the other side. We're met by either a family member, an angel, or a master or guide, depending on what our life was about before. We're usually taken to a place where we can review our life, and it's usually a beautiful natural setting. This is what's being described again and again and again. And then we get a chance to meet our elders, and then eventually choose how we're going to manage our incarnation again. And we make choices oftentimes based on what we need to heal, what we need to bring into balance, or what we want to continue to develop and bring forward. There are many reasons. And we usually end up choosing the parents and the experiences that will best serve us in that. So everything is out of love. It's not, you might have chosen a parent that you hurt in another life, and in this life they take revenge on you, but what are you here to learn? Compassion, forgiveness, acceptance, for example. So in this process of choosing, we come back and we undergo our life. And we live through these experiences. Sometimes we come very happily and ready to receive the world. Sometimes it's indifferently, or in the case, or sometimes reluctantly. So, for example, there was a true story, and I share this because I find it humorous, but it's very true. That was in the New York Times back in the early 90s, and this was a story told to us by an Indian teacher, Papaji, back then. And it's of a mother that's giving birth to a little baby, and this event was witnessed by the nurse and the doctor that were there. And when the little baby is born, and they suction the little baby, they cut the cord and so on. Of course, they're expecting the little baby to be crying and, immediately wanting its mother. But to their shock, and again, this is a true story, that this little baby opens its eyes, it looks around, and for a moment it says, "Oh no, not again." This is a reluctant soul. And then starts crying because the veil is put over of its memories, and that veil continues till we decide we want to take a look again. And that's what past life therapy is about.
But I am very much sure that the life in the earth is much more than just, oh no, not again.
Absolutely.
So I do believe, and somehow I have the feeling that those people who visit your seminars, who participate in your seminars, can make their life better and first to come back and enjoy and have a divine life.
Absolutely.
In the earth. What do you think?
I totally agree with you that that really we are here to enjoy and feel the blessings of what we're given, everything that we're given, and we don't. The problem, I think, again, is that when we're in this high stress state we've talked about before. We live in what we call poverty consciousness. Like we need something out there to make us happy, to fulfill us, to make life okay, to make our name okay, our identity okay, whatever. And we don't realize that happiness really comes from within. And we have to find it. And we have to be responsible to let go of those old thoughts and beliefs and emotional patterns that keep us imprisoned in this feeling that, you know, oh no, not again. And as we do that, as we clear these old thought patterns, we call them elementals, that we then are less attached to our experiences and we can experience things more directly and purely. And then we can feel our joy again. We can feel our freedom again. And that's the aim and goal of, I think, any process of inner exploration, to really find that freedom and to live with more blessedness. I don't know if I would even call it happiness. Most people think of happiness as, oh, I'm going to do this or I'm going to eat this and then I'm happy. It's more like happiness of itself, that it is your state, your natural, pure state, and that's what you were intended to live.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Nick. So I recommend those who were very much interested in past lives and life between lives and for a better life to visit Nick's seminars and go for the divine life. Thank you.
Thank you, Till.
Thank you.